My patient is 36-year male patient by name Anand, came from Nizamabad, farmer by occupation, came with chief complaints of palpitation since 2 years, breathlessness since 3 months, and chest heaviness since 3 months. Coming to the history of present illness, he was apparently all right until 2 years back when he noticed episodes of palpitations during exertion while doing his regular field works, which are gradual in onset, rapid. There is he is feeling like thumping sensation of the chest, relieved by taking rest after about 10 to 15 minutes. There is no issue of palpitations at rest and not associated with the post-palpitation diuresis, not associated with any giddiness, blurring of vision, or syncope.
How long did the palpitation last?
Since 2 years, ma'am.
No. Is it episodic or it's coming?
It's only episodic, ma'am. He's telling that the episode of palpitations associated with the exertion. After exertion, within 10 minutes, he used to be relieving of palpitations, ma'am.
Okay. So what is the significance of diuresis here?
In case of arrhythmias, supraventricular tachycardias, they can have post palpitation diuresis, ma'am.
Due to?
Increase natriuretic peptides.
Which natriuretic peptide?
Atrial natriuretic peptides, ma'am.
Okay. So are you suspecting here?
No, ma'am.
Arrhythmic palpitation or
volume outload palpitation. To rule out arrhythmic palpitations, I have mentioned that issue.
Okay.
History of symptoms of breathlessness started 3 months back. Sudden onset while doing heavy weightlifting during the field work, for which he was forced to stop his work and take rest for about 2 to 3 days. After 2 to 3 days, he continued to have breathlessness after resuming his regular activities and gradually progressed to function class 3 over last 2 months while doing activities like bathing, dressing and undressing and walking for about 100 meters. Because of this, he was homebound since 1 month. And ma'am.
Dyspnea started 2 months back?
2 months back, ma'am, while doing heavy exertion, ma'am.
Okay.
Sudden onset heavy exertion.
Okay.
After that, the breathlessness continued to have functional class 2, ma'am, progressed to functional class 3 over last 2 months. And there is no issue of P&D orthopnea, no issue of pedal edema, no issue of abdominal distension or cough, or no issue of hemoptysis, ma'am. And
no issue of chest pain during that episode?
Chest pain is same, ma'am. Next time describing. There is issue of sudden onset of chest heaviness along with the breathlessness. So, which is telling the central retrosternal. He's telling him not radiating, relieved by taking rest for about 10 to 15 minutes, and slightly increased on exertion. And that chest pain also progressed to function class 3 or last 2 months. And it is not associated with no issue of nocturnal angina, no issue of postprandial angina, and no issue of rest angina.
Is he getting angina on chest pain on exertion?
He is telling that chest heaviness on exertion. He is getting breathlessness and chest heaviness on exertion. And there is no issue of prolonged fever and no issue of hospitalization. So he did not consult any doctor during last 3 months, last 2 years. So because of progressive breathlessness and increase in chest pain, he went to primary physician and he was evaluated and told that there is some cardiac problem is there, for which he was referred to cardiologist, and hence he came here for further management. He was admitted for 3 days, given medications, and necessary test was done, and told that surgery is needed for his condition as per the patient issue.
Okay. So now 36-year-old male was asymptomatic to the age of 34 years, right?
Yes, palpitations, episodic palpitations.
Up 34 years, he was asymptomatic. Right?
Asymptomatic, ma'am. Asymptomatic.
Okay. Can you mention some conditions where they can be asymptomatic up to that age and then develop symptoms?
It could be seen in congenital heart disease like bicuspid aortic valve.
Okay, you start with congenital heart disease. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Congenital heart disease with bicuspid aortic valve.
These are the same symptoms. I'm just asking asymptomatic. Many times in the exam, you get patient will be totally asymptomatic, and you find something. So the most commonly asked question: what are the conditions which will be asymptomatic up to this age?
Yes,
so you have to start telling congenital heart disease. Okay.
Congenital bicuspid aortic valve can present with aortic stenosis or aortic regurgitation, ma'am. And atrial septal defect can also present.
Start with shunt lesion. Shunt lesion.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Atrial septal defect.
What type of ASTs can be asymptomatic at this age?
Ostium secundum type of AST.
And sinus venosus also.
Sinus venosus. Yes, ma'am. Sinus venosus AST can also present.
Why not ostium primum?
Ostium primum, generally it is associated with partial AV canal defects and associated with cleft mitral valve, so leading to mitral regurgitation. So they can present early, ma'am.
Yeah, if the MR is mild, they may present later also. Okay, later. Usually because. Okay, then. So along with the. Is anything else? What other pre-tricuspid?
They can present with partial anomalous pulmonary venous connection. Can have late presentation.
Then next post-tricuspid
post-tricuspid lesions in case of restrictive VSD, possibility is there.
Small VSD,
small VSD, and with complications of aortic regurgitation can present. Generally earlier presentation, but some cases they can present at this age.
Then any other shunts? PD you mentioned, small PD also. We have
small
seen
PD also. Yes,
it was unnoticed. Okay, then any other shunt?
About defect also generally they can present it late.
Okay, that's any others? It all depends on the amount of shunt. If there's small shunt, more shunt, they may present later. Otherwise,
and
then coronary AV fistula.
Coronary AV fistula can present
later. Then aneurysm. Aneurysm, either unruptured or small ruptured aneurysm. 20% of small ruptured aneurysm of sinus valsalva can be asymptomatic. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah. Then, so that's about the shunt lesions. Then you go to obstructive lesions.
Obstructive lesions like bicuspid aortic valve. Bicuspid aortic valve with aortic stenosis.
Yes.
And coarctation of aorta can present, ma'am.
Correct. Yeah.
Associated with the connective tissue disorders like Marfan.
Rarely we use the biotic membrane and supramine. Also present later, right? Sometimes usually they present in childhood, but they can present later.
Okay.
Then RVOT obstruction.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, generally they present in late life.
Yes.
Pulmonary valvular stenosis, infundibular stenosis. They may present during third, fourth decade. Then more complications. Talked about shunt lesions, obstructive lesions. Any other complex lesions can present later in life? Ebstein's anomaly, no?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. That is one condition which may present in utero with hydrops fetalis, or they may present very late in life, depending on the severity. Then, corrected transposition of great arteries.
Yes, ma'am.
They may present later with left AV valve regurgitation or systemic ventricular dysfunction. If they don't have associated lesions, they may present. Then VSDPS.
Yes.
Okay, these are the more complex conditions which may present later, right?
Yes.
Then MEPMR.
Yes, ma'am.
Then Cardiomyopathy, any cardiomyopathy can present?
Hypertrophic cardiomyopathy and restrictive cardiomyopathy also can.
Maybe not. The hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, they can present at any age, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. When you are asked about the asymptomatic lesions, which may present later, so all these we should include: shunt lesions, obstructive lesions, more complex congenital lesions, and some other valvular lesions and cardiomyopathy like hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Okay. So that is about the before 34 years. He became symptomatic with palpitation. Now, why do you think he developed palpitation suddenly at 36 years, 34 years, right?
Yes, ma'am. Palpitations generally is telling volume overload palpitations, ma'am. Maybe because of aortic regurgitation. So, in case of VSD with aortic regurgitation, they can have palpitations, ma'am. And in case of bicuspid aortic valve with the regurgitation also, they can have palpitations.
Yeah. So you have to think of AR causes. Where else you can get AR? One is, you said bicuspid valve. Where else you get AR?
Bicuspid and connective tissue disorders like Marfan's, Ehlers-Danlos.
No, any congenital heart disease where you can get that.
Yes, ma'am. And
where else you get
can be
AR
in
subaortic membrane?
Yes, ma'am. Subaortic membrane.
Membrane. How often they develop AR?
50% of cases they can have AR.
70% they can have 60-70%. Okay. So VSD. One AR you're thinking of in association with either VSD or a bicuspid aortic valve or subaortic membrane, or can this unruptured sinus of valves cause AR?
Can cause, ma'am. Sometimes it can prevent the leaflet closure and opening. It may interrupt the opening and closure and cause aortic regurgitation.
What are all the mechanisms of AR?
In unruptured, ma'am.
Yes.
It can cause LVOT obstruction, ma'am.
AR is seen in some 30 to 50% of sinus of valve aneurysm, either ruptured or unruptured. So it could be because of aortic cusp prolapse. How often they have VSD?
Aortic cusp prolapse, around 70% of cases it will be associated, ma'am, especially subpulmonary VSDs.
Okay, we'll come to that later then. Okay, then one is you're thinking of AR, then?
Here, second, maybe
the
because
diagnosis may be different. You have to analyze the history. Finally, diagnosis may be different. But
yes,
yeah, each symptom and at each stage you have to analyze the history. Okay, one is AR. Second.
Second thing, it could be mitral regurgitation also.
Okay.
But mitral regurgitation less likely to produce palpitation compared to aortic regurgitation. Because in rheumatic heart disease with mitral regurgitation can be possibility there.
Okay. Then any other cause of volume overload palpitation? Shunt lesions can cause?
Shunt lesions can cause, ma'am.
But at this age, maybe less likely because it is not shunt lesion. Okay. Can ASD cause palpitation?
Can cause, ma'am, but more of arrhythmic palpitations, ma'am.
Usually after 4th decade, because palpitation due to arrhythmias. Fine. Okay. Next event was?
Next event was sudden onset of breathlessness and sudden onset of chest pain during heavy exertion.
Can you tell what are the causes of acute onset dyspnea?
Acute onset dyspnea can be seen in acute pulmonary embolism, ma'am, acute MI, acute myocardial infarction, and acute pneumothorax and acute severe bronchial asthma.
First cardiac. Finish off all cardiac. Then you can go to respiratory. Correct. One is acute coronary syndrome, the causes LVF. Then pulmonary embolism. Then patient with known to have some mitral valve prolapse with MR, and suddenly one day patient comes with the acute onset dyspnea. What is the possibility?
Development of mitral regurgitation. Development collapse because of severe collapse.
Spontaneous caudal rupture.
Yes, ma'am.
Because the tensile strength of the chordae are less, they can have spontaneous caudal rupture and defect of the mitral valve. They can have acute severe MR and they can have acute dyspnea. Then, if patient has infective endocarditis, they may have acute AR or acute MR present with
breathlessness.
This acute onset dyspnea. Then myocarditis.
Yes, ma'am.
Anyway, we have to rule out. Here there is no history of fever. We can rule out unlikely that it is infective endocarditis or myocarditis. And of course, ruptured sinus of Valsalva. As you said, the history of some exertion. Is that dyspnea was related to this exertion? Is it?
Yes, ma'am.
The other commonly asked question in such situation is, what are the causes for acute onset chest pain?
So, acute onset chest pain is because of acute myocardial infarction.
One more cause for acute onset dyspnea is also aortic dissection, because 40 to 80% nearly can have acute AR. It may also develop acute onset dyspnea. Acute onset chest pain.
Acute onset chest pain, acute aortic dissection, ma'am, and acute MI, myocardial infarction, any coronary syndrome, and acute coronary syndrome, and acute pulmonary embolism, ma'am. And
why do they develop chest pain, Rajesh?
Yes, ma'am.
Why do they develop chest pain in acute pulmonary embolism?
The first thing is because of demand supply mismatch, ma'am. And because of pulmonary infarction also they can have chest pain.
Pulmonary infarction, yes, that is a pleuritic type of pain. Okay. Any other cause? Patient
RV ischemia.
Again RSOV, they can have acute chest pain.
Yes.
Pericarditis. Then you can add other respiratory causes of dyspnea and chest pain. You want to mention that? You can mention.
Yes.
Okay. So causes of chest pain with dyspnea now.
Yes, ma'am.
Acute onset chest pain with dyspnea. What are the causes? So that's what your patient has, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Tell me the causes now.
Chest pain with dyspnea. One possibility is aortic dissection. Possibility is there, ma'am. Acute coronary syndromes is possibility is there, ma'am. And acute pulmonary embolism.
For everything, possibility is there. You just mention acute coronary syndrome.
Acute coronary syndrome, acute pulmonary embolism, and RSO, ruptured sinus of Valsalva, and MVP with MR.
Why do they get chest pain?
Because sudden tensing on the papillary muscles can produce chest pain.
It's not that common.
Mitral valve collapse.
I'm not sure. Dyspnea is okay, but chest pain, I'm not sure. Okay. Anyway, so these are the things you should know if the patient gives such history. What are the causes for acute dyspnea, acute chest pain, and combined chest pain and dyspnea? ACS, correct. RSOV, aortic dissection. Sometimes even acute pericarditis. They may have some chest pain with some, they may describe it as dyspnea also, because the pain restricts the respiratory movements. Then, yeah. Now next, what happens?
After that, he has taken 2 days of rest, ma'am. After that, he was resumed activity. Again, he continued to have breathlessness, functional class 2, and chest pain on exertion, functional class 2. Ma'am. Then gradually progressed to function class 3 or 2.
do you think this chest pain is anginal chest pain? Would you diagnose anginal chest pain?
Anginal chest pain, they should have can be divided into. It can be diagnosed based on typical or atypical pain or non-cardiac chest pain. Typical chest pain, it should have quality of chest pain should be like pressure or heaviness, which is precipitated by exertion or emotional stress, which is relieved by taking rest or by nitrates.
What are you complete? So one is precipitating factor. What are the precipitating factors?
Because of exertion,
Physical
exertion or emotional stress. Emotional stress.
Two more. Exposure to cold.
Yes, ma'am.
And
cold
food.
Food. Yes, ma'am.
Those are the precipitating factors. Relieving factors, you all know it is.
Yes, ma'am. Relieved by taking the rest or nitrates.
Okay, then.
If all three criteria are present, it is called typical.
What is the third one?
Third one is quality of pain is pressure or heaviness.
Okay, that third one actually includes three things. One is site, that is retrosternal.
Yes, ma'am.
Second is character, as you said, heaviness, burning, voice-like. They almost deny that it is pain. They say some kind of discomfort. Okay. Third is duration. What is the duration of typical anginal pain?
Duration in case of acute, it is less than 10 minutes, ma'am. If it is more than 10 minutes, we have to suspect acute coronary syndrome.
So from where you got this 10 minutes? I thought it is 20 minutes.
Unstable acute coronary syndrome, like unstable angina, more than 10 minutes.
More than 20 minutes. More than 20 minutes is yes. So it should be more than 1 minute. Okay. Very transient pains less than 1 minute is unlikely to be angina. Okay, and it should be less than 20 minutes. Usually 5 minutes, 10 minutes. See, angina is diagnosed only by history. You should be very thorough with this. You cannot make any mistakes in this.
Okay.
Okay, so the site, character, and the duration makes 1 point. Precipitating factor, second point. Third point is relieving factor.
Relieving factor.
So all three are there, then it is typical.
Typical chest pain.
Then
atypical. If only two of the characters are there, it is atypical, ma'am. If only one or none, it is non-cardiac chest pain.
Non-anginal chest pain. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
What is this PQRST of angina? Have you heard?
Yes, ma'am. Precipitating factors, quality of pain, relieving factors, site of the pain, and
time. So this summarizes actually these 5 characters.
Yes.
Fine. So do you think this patient has typical angina pain?
As per the history, it is typical chest pain, ma'am.
Okay. So now your patient has dyspnea and chest pain. So
yes.
Okay. What are the possibilities?
Because he's engaged, ma'am, in the past, there are no risk factors. So, around 30 years of age, most probable first possibility I'm thinking ruptured signs of Valsalva, and second possibility could be aortic dissection. But aortic dissection with this long latent course, generally they have high mortality, ma'am. So I'm aortic dissection is less likely.
The natural history of aortic dissection.
Ma'am?
What is the natural history of aortic dissection?
Aortic dissection generally present with the severe chest pain, ma'am, at the onset. And
natural history usually there's survival and other things. No, you said it is 2 months, no?
Yes, ma'am, 2 months.
The dyspnea started. So how many aortic dissection patients will live up to this 2 months? That's what is.
Aortic dissection unlikely, ma'am, up to 2 months without any intervention causing ischemia.
No, that for that you should know the natural history. How many died in the first hour? How many during the first day, 1 week? Have you read?
Exact value I don't know.
What?
The exact mortality I don't know.
The mortality. Okay. Anyway, you can read of that.
Yes.
Hmm?
Okay.
Because when you say aortic dissection, that is the first thing you have to tell. Natural history. Okay, it's unlikely because most of them die during the first week itself.
Yes.
Oh. Next.
Next, acute coronary syndrome, ma'am. Acute coronary syndrome because the patient is not having any risk factors and no family history of CAD. And acute coronary syndrome without intervention can have high mortality. So that is also less likely, ma'am. But
It's okay. Yes, no risk factors.
yes.
Second. Okay. Yeah, but he still continues to have angina and dyspnea. Maybe you'll have to keep in mind. But how do you explain that palpitation before? Any relation between that palpitation and this event? Acute worsening?
If you are thinking, if you want to fit in acute coronary syndrome, it can be because of ischemic MR previously causing palpitations. It may be precipitated by exertion now.
Was ischemic MR. It's unlikely. Ischemic MR will not have usually palpitation. They have more of dyspnea.
Yes,
He was otherwise asymptomatic. There was no dyspnea, no chest pain. Yeah, it's unlikely. I don't think you should do that. Huh?
Arrhythmia precipitating, AF precipitating with ACS, ma'am. But it is the character of palpitation is more like volume overload.
Volume. Okay. Suppose you consider ruptured sinus of Valsalva. Anything can precede this episode? Any congenital abnormality can precede?
VST with aortic regurgitation will precede, ma'am. VST,
yeah, they can. That's what I asked. How often they will have VST and what type of VST? Usually.
VST, usually subarterial VST, subpulmonic VST is more commonly associated with the VST with aortic regurgitation, ma'am. Around in 70% of patients, they will have subpulmonary VST.
No, I'm asking about ruptured sinus of Valsalva. See, they may have a small VST which is unrecognized. 30 to 50% of them may have VST, which later they may develop aneurysm. What is the mechanism of this aneurysm formation?
First thing is there will be medial abnormality will be there, ma'am, in sinus of Valsalva.
Which part of the aorta?
At the level of junction between the aortic valve and sinus, ma'am. There will be medial abnormality with the aortic valve and sinus.
There is incomplete fusion of the aortic media with the aortic valve annulus. There is absence of normal elastic and muscular tissue just above the annulus of the aortic valve. That is where it starts bulging at that region, just above the annulus of the aorta. Yes. Which sinus usually is the most commonly involved?
Most commonly, right coronary sinus is most commonly involved.
Why? Why is it more commonly involved?
Because it is more dependent. Sorry.
No, it's supposed to be because the jut is directed posteriorly and towards the right. That is why it's most often involved. Our jut, no, from LV to aorta, the jut is directed more towards the right sinus. So when there is inherent weakness in that area, the aneurysm formation occurs more commonly in the right sinus. Okay.
Discontinuity, you told something. No, I didn't get it. Discontinuity in the?
So this aortic media
Yes, ma'am.
There is some lack of elastic tissue, it seems, at the junction of the annulus and the sinus portion of the aorta. Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
The normal elastic and muscular tissue is absent in the aortic wall just above the aortic valve annulus. So there is deficiency of this, which leads to aneurysm formation. The deficiency is present at birth. Rarely aneurysms are present at birth. They slowly progress, and very rarely they rupture before second decade. Usually after second decade. Okay, is it clear?
Yes.
Arun, is it clear?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So there is failure of fusion. That's what they say. The elastic layer of the aortic media fails to fuse with the annulus fibers. That means there is a deficiency in that. Okay. So these people can have VSC. 30 to 50% of them may have VSC.
Yes.
And yeah, but it usually a small VSC. I don't know why it caused palpitation for only 2 years before. Little difficult to explain, but onset of AR in these patients may explain the palpitation. So that is what I was asking. What are the mechanisms of AR in patients with unruptured sinus of Valsalva aneurysm? One you said is VSD, which can lead to aortic cusp prolapse and cause AR. Second, distortion of the aortic leaflets by the aneurysm.
Okay.
Yes. Third can be because of infective endocarditis. And sometimes there may be morphological abnormalities of the aortic valve. So this is about congenital. What are the causes for acquired?
Causes of acquired aortic regurgitation can be. It can be because of
acquired sinus of Valsalva aneurysm and rupture.
It can be associated with connective tissue disorders like mitral Marfan syndrome, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome.
So they all cause diffuse narrowing of the sinuses. They don't cause localized aneurysm or bulge. So when do you get, what is the most common cause for acquired aortic sinus of Valsalva aneurysm? Infection.
Yes.
Cause is infective endocarditis. So there is problem whether the infective endocarditis is causing aneurysm or aneurysm is causing infective endocarditis. Sometimes it's difficult to differentiate. So most common is infective endocarditis. Have you not seen in your practice? Aneurysm causing rupture, causing fistula between the aorta and the RV, RA. No?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then earlier days, syphilis, tuberculosis, trauma during cardiac surgery or interventions, autoimmune diseases like Takayasu. So these are some acquired causes rarely. If you see an aneurysm of the left sinus of Valsalva, what comes to your mind?
It's likely to be iatrogenic, ma'am. Acquired cause.
It is secondary cause or acquired cause. It's not a primary abnormality of the aortic media. It is acquired cause, either infection or trauma, autoimmune diseases. Okay. And another thing is when you see two or more, usually this involves single sinus, congenital. When you see two or more sinuses, you should suspect other causes. Okay. Now, yeah. So with the history of AR here and then sinus of Valsalva rupture. Coronary artery disease is less likely because there is more risk factors, but you have to keep in mind.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Past history, no issue of frequent respiratory tract infection during childhood and no issue of rheumatic fever in the childhood, ma'am. Personal history: not a smoker, not an alcoholic, takes Mixidate, sleep, bowel and bladder normal. Family history, not significant family history. General examination, patient is
Wait,
conscious.
before that, I want to ask two questions. What are the causes of valvular heart disease with coronary artery disease?
Madam, can you repeat
What are the causes
it?
of valvular heart disease with coronary artery disease?
Valvular heart disease with coronary heart
Because
disease.
patient has angina, so you may be expecting something which involves both coronaries and the valve. What are the causes?
Aortic stenosis can have, but it is elderly. Aortic stenosis.
Okay, degenerative aortic stenosis. Okay, degenerative aortic stenosis, they can have coronary artery disease as well. Okay, then aortoarteritis.
Yes, ma'am.
What are the cardiac manifestations of aortoarteritis?
They can present with aortic regurgitation, and they can present with limb claudication.
No.
And
I am asking you for cardiac manifestations or
aortic
cardiac
regurgitation, and they can present with ischemia, myocardial ischemia also.
How often they have involvement with the coronaries? Earlier it is mentioned as 5-10%, but 30% of them have shown to have in one series coronary artery involvement. Okay. Then AR, coronary artery involvement. Then what else? Anybody?
MR and myocarditis, pulmonary artery hypertension.
Due to?
Pulmonary artery involvement in 50% of the
Yeah,
cases.
50% of them can have pulmonary artery involvement that may lead to pulmonary hypertension. So one of the work of pulmonary hypertension is aortoarteritis. Then myocarditis.
Systemic hypertension, heart failure.
Yeah, LV dysfunction. It could be due to myocarditis or ischemia or hypertension. So very commonly we see this combination of AR with LV dysfunction. In a young female, if you see AR and LV dysfunction, see in AR, LV dysfunction occurs in the late stages. So if you think this combination, you have to suspect many patients you have seen with AR, LV dysfunction, and that turns out to be aortoarteritis. Okay, so coronary, pulmonary, aortic valve, mitral valve, LV dysfunction, all these can happen in patients with. You have to keep this osteoarthritis. You have to keep in mind. Okay. So degenerative aortoarteritis, where else? Syphilis, though rare, but still we do get some cases sometimes. Syphilis, where it is known to involve coronary artery. Then
mitral stenosis with clot in LA leading to coronary emboli is very rarely.
Okay, that's acute. Yeah. Then familial hypercholesteremia. You can get coronary artery disease as well as aortic stenosis, either valvular or supravalvular. Familial hypercholesteremia. Actually, last exam we had kept a case of familial hypercholesteremia with AS as well as MR. Okay.
Okay.
Then another question commonly asked is causes of AR plus acute coronary syndrome.
Cause of AR and acute coronary syndrome is seen in acute aortic dissection involving the RCM.
Okay, good. How often it involves the right coronary artery or coronary artery?
The right coronary artery, 40%.
Hey, no, not so common. Coronary artery involvement, as I know, is
less than 1%.
Yeah, more often it is right coronary, not 40%. Okay. Then aortic dissection one. Then again syphilis, which is common. Then infective endocarditis, where there can be coronary embolism, or as you said, mitral stenosis with any embolic manifestations. Then aortoarteritis. So these are the usual questions asked in this situation of AR, ACS, or acute chest pain. Okay, go ahead.
General physical examination, ma'am. Patient is conscious, coherent, height is 167 centimeters, weight is 54 kg.
1 second, sorry to interrupt you. When you say conscious, no, many times examiners will object for that because you are not given an unconscious patient, right?
Yes, ma'am. Patient.
No, some examiners objected for that when you say conscious.
Okay.
We may say alert.
Okay. Height is 167 centimeters. Weight is 54 kg. BMI 17.5 kg per meter square. Upper segment to lower segment ratio 1:1. Arm span 165 centimeters. There is no feature suggestive of Marfanoid habitus. No musculoskeletal or dysmorphic features. Spine was
Can Marfan's have valvular lesion with coronary artery? Is it common?
no, ma'am. Because I'm thinking ruptured signs of Valsalva, so I want to rule out Marfan association.
Marfan's usually it causes dissection. You may think of Marfan, not RSOV. RSOV is not really associated with Marfan's.
Okay.
There's two syndromes described with RSOV. One is Noonan syndrome, other is Klippel-Feil syndrome.
Klippel-Feil syndrome.
That both are given in Perloff. Noonan's and Klippel-Feil. Marfan's usually causes diffuse aneurysm of the sinuses. Okay.
And spine normal, tendon height in good man. No pallor, no icterus, no cyanosis, no clumping, no lymphadenopathy. Vitals, temperature febrile, pulse rate is 90 per minute, regular, high volume, collapsing, no radial delay, no radiofemoral delay, no vessel wall thickening, all peripheral pulses well felt equally on both sides. Prominent carotid pulsations are present, and drop space and urogis murmur are present. Drop spine and urogis murmur are present.
So there is evidence of central runoff in the
Yes, ma'am. Aortic run, central.
aortic runoff. What are the causes for aortic runoff? Central aortic runoff or central runoff?
Any hyperdynamic condition can cause hyperdynamic conditions like anemia.
Hyperdynamic usually they say it is peripheral runoff, not central runoff. Central runoff means that blood is trying to go back to the heart. Aortic runoff.
Aortic regurgitation.
Correct.
And ruptured signs of Valsalva. One possibility is there.
Then go on. You don't have to say one possibility. You just mentioned AR, RSOV with significant shunt. Then PDA
with PR. PDA with pulmonary regurgitation.
PDA alone will not cause, sir?
Can cause.
No, PDA, small PDA will not cause. PDA, moderate to large shunt can cause.
Yes.
Then?
Truncus, AP window.
AP window, most of the time, they're hypertensive. Okay. Then shunt surgeries following. Shunt surgeries. Your aortopulmonary collaterals. AV fistula also is considered. Aortic runoff. What is one sign of central runoff? Which is very common to us. What is the one sign of central runoff? All these collapsing, you get in all the conditions.
Diastolic blood pressure is low, ma'am.
Anemia also it can be low, reduced.
Yes. Increased stroke volume with decreased peripheral distance.
Their sign.
Durosis
BP less than 50.
Durosis murmur is one sign which they indicate central runoff. So you're compressing distally, you get a diastolic murmur, no? That indicates central runoff. Okay.
Now, AV fistula causes peripheral runoff or central runoff?
Both they say. They say both. I also think, I was thinking it is peripheral. Anyway, you confirm. Okay. Then. Here I would like to ask, may not be relevant to this case, but sometimes you may not get any. So when you say pulse is regular,
Yes.
what are the causes for regular rhythm with varying volume?
Regular rhythm pulses alternates, ma'am.
Okay. Regular rhythm pulses alternates then.
And IABP.
That is iatrogenic. Okay, before that.
VPC.
VPC is rhythm abnormal. I must. Regular rhythm with varying volume. Complete heart block and VT. That is the answer expected. Complete heart block, there is varying volume. VT also, there is varying volume of the pulse. Not in this situation, I'm just mentioning some common questions asked. Then the other commonly asked question is atrial fibrillation with regular appearing pulse. What are the causes?
Atrial fibrillation with AV block, they can have regular, ma'am. Controlled ventricular heart rate.
Sometimes controlled ventricular rate, you may not be able to appreciate the irregularity. In such situation, what will you do?
I have to see for the pulse deficit. Pulse deficit.
Pulse deficits will not be helpful when there is slow rate, because all will be conducted to the periphery. Make the patient little exercise, heart rate increases, then you can make for the irregularity. Okay?
Okay.
Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. One is AF with controlled ventricular rate, which is apparent, it is not truly regular. But many times I have seen our PGs making it as sinus rhythm and later it turns out to be AF. Okay. Then you said, as you said, complete heart block. Then earlier days when digoxin was given one tablet, we used to get very often rate of 100 and regular. What may be the reason?
AF with THP.
PAT, atrial tachycardia with 2:1 log. Anyway, nowadays it is less common. Okay. Then of course intermittent atrial fibrillation. Okay. Go ahead. So your pulse is.
Pulse is the high volume, ma'am. And blood pressure is 125/60 in right upper limb supine position, 120/58 in left upper limb supine position, lower limb 140. Jugular venous pressure elevate.
Lower limb how much?
140, ma'am.
140?
Systolic pressure, ma'am.
140?
Yes, ma'am. 140, ma'am.
What is the difference between upper limb and lower limb pressure now?
15.
15.
Yes.
Not suggestive of Hilson.
Hilson.
Hilson positive or negative?
Negative, ma'am. It should be more than 20.
Okay.
Jugular venous pressure elevated.
When is Hilson negative in patients with severe runoff for a AR?
It can be an LV dysfunction, ma'am. In case of associated aortic stenosis.
Okay.
Peripheral vascular disease.
Peripheral vascular disease. Okay.
Jugular venous pressure elevated 5 cm from above the clavicle. A-wave prominent, ma'am. Normal inspiratory fall.
So JP, what did you say? Normal.
Elevated, ma'am. 5 cm above the clavicle.
So you saw it
with A-wave prominent.
No, in sitting posture, it is 5 cm above the clavicle.
Yes.
So, what is the RA pressure here?
RA pressure is 10 centimeters of autumn. 10 centimeters.
From clavicle, you said it's 5 cm. From sternal angle, how much?
Like
usually,
12
centimeters. Clavicle is around 4 to 5 centimeters. See, when you say JP measure, it is from sternal angle to the upper level. Then you add 5 centimeters. Here you are talking about clavicle. So from then it is
15 centimeters. 15
better
centimeters.
when you calculate it is from sternal angle to the upper level, then you can. Okay, fine. Which waves are prominent, you said?
A-wave prominent.
A-wave prominent.
Next, coming to the systemic examination, trachea central, chest is bilateral symmetrical, apex pit is in the left 6 intercostal space, half an inch lateral to the mid-clavicular line.
BP, one second, I just forgot to ask you 2 questions I wanted to ask you. BP, the standard cuff size?
Width is 40% of the arm circumference, ma'am. Length is 80%.
When I are asked standard cuff size, you have to say what is length and width of standard cuff available. That is the requirement you are saying.
Yes, ma'am.
What you use, no adult cuff. What is this
Yes, ma'am.
standard size?
Is around bladder width is around 17 centimeters, ma'am. Length is 32 centimeters.
No, it's 12 into 24.
12 by 24.
Or 5 into 10 inches. Okay. So these things you cannot make mistakes. 12 into 24. Okay. Other question maybe causes. What is auscultatory gap?
Auscultatory gap generally it is seen in elderly people, ma'am. If you don't see without palpatory method, if you see the BP, there will be gap in the Kortkoff sounds, which may be perceived as.
Which phase of Kortkoff sounds you get this?
Phase 2, man.
Phase 2.
Between phase 2 and 3.
Yeah, between 1 you will start feeling that 2 it disappears. So what happens to systolic pressure and diastolic pressure if you miss it?
Systolic pressure will be underestimated.
Diastolic pressure will be
overestimated.
So these are basics you should not take this. So, what is the stethoscope length, by the way? Tube length? Length of stethoscope tube. 10 to 12 inches, okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Chest is bilaterally symmetrical, ma'am. Apex weight is in the left sixth intercostal space, half an inch lateral to the midclavicular line. Hyperdynamic LV type of left ventricular type of apex, and there is a continuous thrill felt in the left third and fourth intercostal space. No palpable sounds, and the parasternal pulsations and epigastric pulsations of RV type present. There are no scars on the chest.
What scars you look for in this patient?
I'm thinking because it's acute event, I'm thinking of any trauma, blunt trauma injuries. Blunt
trauma will not leave any scar.
Scar.
Scar, I thought you were thinking of some surgery before. Okay.
But there is no issue of surgery, ma'am. That's why I'm not doing surgery.
Right.
Yes. Auscultation, percussion.
Wait. Okay, go ahead. Percussion after that.
Percussion, ma'am. Left second intercostal space resonant, ma'am. Apex weight is left heart border is corresponding to resonant, ma'am.
Left second space is resonant, you said?
Yes, ma'am.
I see. You said parasternal heave is there?
Parasternal pulsations are present, ma'am. Not exactly heave.
No heave.
Yes, left heart border.
What do you think about the RV?
Ma'am? JVP?
JVP so much elevation. What do you think? RV is volume overloaded or pressure overloaded?
No, RV volume overloaded. Volume overload.
So clinically, can you differentiate volume versus pressure overload? I think we discussed last time.
Yes, pressure overload, they will have sustained heave, ma'am.
More than half of system.
More than half of the system. Yes.
So you think it's only volume overload?
Volume overload. Right heart border is retrosternal, and right fifth intercostal space hepatic dullness present.
Does it rule out anything? Right heart border is
retrosternal, ma'am.
Yeah. Is it rule out?
RA enlargement.
Okay.
RA enlargement.
So, when do you get RA enlargement in your suspected diagnosis of RSO?
When there is RSOV to RA, they can have RA enlargement.
Then
the
they have-
severe tricuspid regurgitation.
So you're ruling out those two things, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Okay. Not sure. Okay. Good. Okay. Percussion is over. Now
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
before going to auscultation, what is your impression? Nowadays, usually they ask this, be prepared. Huh?
Okay.
So what are all the hemodynamic or what are all the things which come to your mind? Well,
With these findings, I am thinking this is hyperdynamic circulation with high volume pulse with cardiomegaly, and I could feel a continuous thrill with parasternal
okay.
pulsation.
So you say hemodynamics first. LV, volume of blood, right? And you have peripheral signs of aortic run now.
Yes, ma'am.
So what comes to your mind is something like
No.
ER or
Aortic regurgitation.
those things. Okay. Then second thing is RV is it is volume overloaded and there is evidence of right heart failure,
Yes, ma'am.
but no evidence of pulmonary hypertension.
No evidence of pulmonary hypertension.
Little difficult to believe, but yes, history of dyspnea class 3 you said. Do you expect pulmonary hypertension or not?
Yes, ma'am.
We expect. So in which patients you may not appreciate the findings of pulmonary hypertension in spite of patient having some pulmonary hypertension? We discussed this last time.
RV dysfunction. Ma'am, if they develop RV dysfunction,
कंस्ट्रक्टिव करेगा तो
RV dysfunction, okay. Anything else? Like any chest deformity, COPD, prior surgery, elderly people, you may not be able to appreciate the findings of pulmonary hypertension like parasomnia, thick chest wall, no?
Yes, ma'am.
Loud P2. Anyway, you said his body surface area is something like 17.
Yes.
Likely. Any chest deformities? No.
Ma'am.
Any chest deformities? You mentioned?
No chest deformity, ma'am. Bilaterally symmetrical, I mentioned.
We expect some pulmonary hypertension, but you are not able to pick up any findings. Let us see in auscultation whether you will be able to find out. Okay. And you said
Auscultation.
still in the third space. Okay, we'll go,
Yes,
go on.
Yes. Auscultation, first heart sound normal, second heart sound, both components are had. Normal split, normal respiratory variation, ma'am. There is no S3 and no S4.
Wait. When you say talking about S2, you are supposed to tell three things. One is whether you are hearing two components. You said
Yes,
two components. Second, respiratory variation. Third, intensity of each component. A2, P2. So you just left that. P2. We are very much interested in the intensity of P2.
for me, intensity of both A2 and P2 are normal, ma'am.
Normal.
Yes.
P2 is less than A2, is it?
Yes, ma'am.
So there is nothing to suggest pH. Okay.
In left third and fourth intercostal space, I could hear.
Okay, there is no S3, you said?
No S3 and no S4.
Both LV and RV. Did you look for both LV, S3, RVs?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you expect RVS3 in this patient?
Yes, ma'am. RVS3 most likely should be there.
How do you differentiate LVS3 from RVS3?
Based on the site, ma'am, LVS3 at the apex, ma'am, RVS3 in the left sternal border. And RVS3 is slightly lower pitch, ma'am, compared to LVS3.
That may be difficult to. Both are low pitched. Respiratory variation.
Yes.
RVS3 is supposed to increase on inspiration. Okay. Go ahead. No S3, no S4, no additional sounds.
No additional sounds. In left third and fourth intercostal space, a harsh mixed frequency, grade 5/6, continuous murmur, without peaking at S2, without any conduction and respiratory variation. Better head in sitting position with diaphragm of the stethoscope. And no other additional sounds and no other additional murmurs I could hear.
It's already grade 5, you said. But how come it increases the sitting and forward and diaphragm? Anyway, already grade 5 and all, you don't have to do this maneuvers.
Yes.
That's all, only one murmur?
Yes, ma'am.
Any
No
murmur
other
in the
murmurs.
apex? What other murmurs you look for?
I look for flow murmur, ma'am, at the apex. Severe regurgitation and flow murmurs I look.
Regurgitation, what regurgitation causes flow?
Aortic regurgitation.
Does it cause flow murmur? Air causes what murmur in the apex?
Austin Flint murmur.
That is not flow murmur. That is because of
It's because of fluttering of the anterior mitral leaf.
and partial obstruction to the mitral flow.
Mitral leaf. Mitral.
Yeah.
Yes.
Doesn't allow the mitral valve to open. If you have seen a case of AR jet hitting the AML, it doesn't allow the mitral valve to open. So, what is the echo equivalent of that? Bent knee,
movement of AML.
bent knee appearance or reverse hockey stick. Huh? Okay, coming back to your case, yeah. So no other murmurs.
Yes.
So that's all. Any other findings?
No, ma'am. Other system examinations are normal.
No liver.
Liver enlargement, I could not make it.
Okay.
My diagnosis is cyanotic congenital heart disease, ruptured signs of Valsalva to RVOT outflow tract. So type 2 as per modified Sakakibara classification with large left to right shunt with QP by QS more than 2:1 in sinus rhythm in NYHA functional class 2 with the treatment with mild pulmonary vascular hypertension and mild pulmonary arterial hypertension. No signs of infected endocarditis.
You said in heart failure. No, it's a class 3, yeah?
Class 2 now with treatment, ma'am. He has taken 3 days of treatment.
Okay. So now, why did you say it is more than 2:1?
Because there is a cardiomegaly is there, ma'am, and JVP elevated and RV pulsations. RV volume overload also.
I will say there is associated AR. How do you rule out that? The associated AR is very common in patients with RSOV.
Yes,
around 30 to 50%. Again, both VSD and AR is seen in 30 to 50% of RSOV. So what can you make out the murmur of separately AR murmur?
difficult, ma'am. In background of continuous murmur.
Yeah, it's difficult to appreciate. So without a flow murmur in the apex, that also can be caused by, that's not flow murmur, without MDM, S3 MDM in the apex. It's difficult to assess the. Okay. So what is the definition of continuous murmur?
Continuous murmur, the murmur starts in the systole, runs through the S2 uninterruptedly into the diastole and in any part of the diastole.
Continue.
Yes.
That's all. What happens to the character?
With is relatively harsh in character with equal frequency
No,
in both in systole.
Wait, it need not be harsh. It can be soft. All PDA can be soft.
Yes, ma'am.
They continues without change in character.
Without change.
Character should be same. Character will not change. Continuous murmur, yeah, starts in systole, continues uninterruptedly through the second. It will differentiate whether systole or diastole. And the character will be same. So it need not occupy the whole of systole or whole of diastole. So those are some rules of continuous murmur. So why do you think it's not PDA? What are the 3 features of PDA murmur?
PDA murmur generally it peaks at S2, ma'am. and associated with eddy sounds.
One more. Site.
Yes,
Where
ma'am.
is that
Site.
short?
Site
Where-
is left infraclavicular area, first and second intercostal space.
Best short supposed to be the second space, and the next best in left first space, not lower down. So if it is heard in the first and second space, it is likely to be PDA. One. Second, you said it peaks around the second sound. Why does it peak around the second sound?
Because there is a delay from the aortic to pulmonary artery that flow because of
Initial part of systole. Yeah, the murmur starts in the flow starts in the later part of systole from aorta to pulmonary artery and early diastole. Then as the grade, okay. Then eddy sounds are due to what?
it's vibrations of the vessel wall, because of two jets hitting from aorta to pulmonary artery and RV to pulmonary artery, causing vibrations of the vessel wall, known as eddy sounds.
Okay, so these are the three features of ductus. So now you say this murmur, you said, is it better heard in systole or diastole?
Ma'am, why it peaks at S2? Didn't get, ma'am.
No, actually the ductus flow starts in the later part of systole. So it has
And then
to
during the diastole, it comes down.
Yes. In the later part of systole and early part of diastole, the maximum flow occurs during that time. Okay.
Ma'am, is it like early, basically the flow to the ductus is from the RV and then aorta flow also occurs, so the murmur gets reinforced, that is why it...
Yeah, that is what. The initial part of it is only from RV to pulmonary artery. Later it is augmented by the, that's what I said, ductus flow. Yeah. You're right. Okay. Then your, what are the characteristic feature of RSOV murmur?
RSOV murmur, depending on the site of rupturing into the chamber.
You tell me all the features of RSOV rupturing into right atrium.
RSOV rupturing into the right atrium, they will have continuous murmur. Murmur predominantly during systole, ma'am.
No. When it ruptures to right atrium, it is a true continuous murmur. Okay, it's better heard during systole because there is a high gradient. Correct.
High gradient. And the murmur can be heard in the right sternal border or left sternal border.
Or lower down the
xiphoid process also.
Or on the sternum. Okay, then.
And they can have associated tricuspid regurgitation and prominence of the V wave in JVP. Ma'am.
JVP will be elevated with prominent V waves. Then you suspect right atrium.
Tricuspid, yes, right atrial.
Then what else? Any other murmur you will hear in the tricuspid area?
Is a flow murmur can be heard across the tricuspid wall.
Flow murmur. This is one condition where you will hear a tricuspid flow murmur and S3 it seems. RVS. Okay. So what are the causes for all four chamber dilatation? Some conditions where all four chambers
can be. First, RSOV is one possibility, ma'am. Next is
RE. You should say
RSOV to RA, ma'am. Next,
any VST can cause this fourth chamber dilatation.
LV to RA, ma'am. Garbot defect.
LV to RA. Those two conditions. Okay, now coming back to RSOV to RV, what are the features?
RSOV to RV, the murmur is classically, it will be louder during diastole, and it will be heard in the left parasternal border.
Why is it better heard during
systole? Actually, during systole, the RV contraction causes narrowing of the fistula tract, so that the systolic component can be suppressed. Only increased RV pressure also, ma'am.
Yeah, RV systolic pressure may go up
also increase.
hypertension. So there may be, but Unlike PDA-PH, you still continue to get the continuous murmur because RV diastolic pressure is low.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Then third, they say is venturi effect of LV to aorta jet beyond the origin of fistula can cause some decrease. Anyway, these two at least you should remember. Okay.
Ma'am,
Then
this RSOV to RV more often produces continuous murmur or systolic murmur, ma'am?
continuous murmur. Continuous murmur better heard during
Systole.
diastole. What did you say? RSO to RV or RA?
RV.
RV usually better heard during diastole because during systole, as he said, that fistulous tract or whatever it is can get narrowed. One. Then when the RV systolic pressure rises during systole, the murmur of during systole can be less and diastole it's better heard.
Okay, ma'am.
And can you make out the VST murmur? What happens if there is a VST? It can augment the systolic component of the murmur. If there is AR, it can augment the diastolic component of the murmur. So sometimes it may be better heard during systole also. It will be better heard during systole or diastole. Okay, sometimes it may sound like.
Only diastole.
What are the mimickers of continuous murmur? I'm not asking causes of continuous murmur. I think that was discussed extensively somewhere previous class. I don't want to discuss that.
Okay.
What mimics?
RSOV. To and fro murmurs, ma'am. VSV
Right.
with.
Yeah.
VSV
What do you mean by to and fro murmur? What are the features of to and fro murmur? How is it different from continuous murmur?
So they'll have there are two separate murmurs, ma'am. Systolic and diastolic.
Through the
and,
same orifice, through the same
yes,
orifice, the same valve.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. But in different direction. It's
Yes,
not in the same direction. So they will have different character. And there may be gap between the systolic and diastolic murmur. The character is different. So best example is ASAR.
Yes. Yes.
Or sometimes PSPR.
PSPR.
Yeah, ASAR. So see in AS, the murmur is diamond shaped, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Then EDM, that is harsh, mixed frequency. Whereas AR murmur will be
EDM murmur.
with high pitched. So the character is different. And even the site of the murmur may be AR murmur will be best heard in left third space, whereas AS murmur will be best heard in the
right second intercostal.
Which type of AR can mimic this? Which type of ASAR?
This aortic root dilatation involving aortic root dilatation.
Aortic root dilatation AR murmur on the right side, no? So we are having a murmur to the left side of the sternum. Come down.
Subaortic.
Subaortic membrane. Yeah, subaortic membrane, if they can have a to and fro murmur which may mimic this murmur. Okay. When there is severe AS, murmur will go on up to A2. Then the AR murmur starts with A2. So it may sound like a continuous murmur, or it may be. You have to bring these differential diagnosis. Okay, one. Second.
PS with PR.
Okay, PSPR, usually it is low pressure PR. I think it was discussed enough. So there's supposed to be a gap, and it's again the character changes. Best heard in the left second space. Okay. Then
absent pulmonary valve.
Yeah, that is. Yes, we have discussed, I think, enough times, during class. Yeah. Where else you get? What is the other murmur which mimics? What is it called?
PSV with AR.
What is that murmur called?
Combined systolic and diastolic.
Oh, okay, systolo-diastolic. So they originate from different structures. So again, they may mimic VSTR. It's a pansystolic murmur and an early diastolic murmur. So the character is different, and there may be a gap. It's difficult sometimes VSTR. You should bring in the VSTR. Okay.
Okay.
Ma'am, MSMR should not be told, no?
MSMR is no,
Should
that is
not be told
usually,
for to and fro murmur, no?
it can be to and fro in the
To and
same
fro,
orifice. The MR AR becomes what? Systole or diastolic. Yeah. Sometimes if the MR murmur is heard better in the face and the AR murmur is in the third space, then you may get overlap and it might cause systole or diastolic murmur. Which type of RSOV you will not get continuous murmur?
Rupturing into LV, ma'am.
Okay, what murmur you get?
Only diastolic murmur can be heard, ma'am, because LV systolic pressure is equal to aortic systolic pressure.
You don't get any systolic murmur?
We can get, ma'am, faint murmur. The systolic murmur is suppressed.
Yeah, increase. Oh, you can get, no? In severe AR, you can get an ejection murmur of grade 3. Similarly, you can get an ejection murmur. The kind of to and fro murmur you can get. So, then what are the manifestations of unruptured sinus of Valsalva?
Actually, unruptured sinus of Valsalva, it can obstruct it can compress the coronary artery, ma'am, and it can cause RVOT obstruction, and it can protrude into the RA, can cause tricuspid regurgitation, and sometimes it can compress the conduction system also, can cause conduction blocks also, and it can lead to rupture.
No, rupture you leave. Unruptured, okay, you said one is it can compress the coronary artery and cause what?
A myocardial ischemia can be produced, ma'am.
Then?
And it can obstruct the RVOT, ma'am. And it can obstruct the, it can protrude into the RA, causing tricuspid regurgitation. And it can cause conduction blocks.
Conduction block, when does it cause conduction block?
RVOT obstruction, compressing the interventricular septum.
Septal extension.
Then,
some of them can rupture into septum also, but
yeah, it can burrow into the septum and can cause the rupture into that. And where else it can rupture, Rajesh?
Sir, rarely it can rupture into pulmonary artery and pericardial cavity.
Pericardial cavity. We already discussed, no? You didn't mention that. It can interfere with the aortic leaflet coaptation and can cause AR.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello? Rajesh, you're with us? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, you said TR. You said also RVOT obstruction?
Yes, ma'am. RVOT
rarely LVOT obstruction?
Can cause, ma'am.
Yeah, there are some case reports of compression of SVC also. Coronary artery, most commonly left coronary artery, which can cause angina. Then what else? Aneurysm can cause. Any murmur it can cause?
It can cause continuous murmur, to and fro murmur, ma'am.
To and fro murmur.
To and fro murmur.
Goes into the aneurysm and comes out, then it can cause to and fro murmur. And sometimes it can act as a nidus for thrombus, and they can have thromboembolism. Thromboembolism. Yes, rarely infective endocarditis. Okay, how the clinical manifestation depends on what? Rupture.
First thing is the type of the presentation, ma'am. It can be acute, subacute, sometimes asymptomatic also. And second thing is the chamber with it is rupturing.
So it depends on three things. One is
onset, ma'am.
Rapidity. If it is rapid onset, as your patient has, they can have sudden onset of dyspnea, chest pain, and heart failure. Second, gradual progression. Right?
Yes,
asymptomatic, you said. The rapidity. Second is the amount of shunt. If it is a small shunt, they may be asymptomatic. If it's a large shunt, they may develop heart failure early. Third is the chamber to which it
Rupture.
ruptures. So those are the three factors which decide the clinical course.
Yes.
Okay. Any other differential diagnosis you want to bring in?
In this stage, we can consider coronary AV fistulas, ma'am, but coronary AV fistulas won't cause this much of volume overload and shunt, ma'am.
Mm.
And rare possibilities of Al-Kappa also is possible too. Survival up to this stage, some case reports are there. Al-Kappa.
Yeah, coronary AV fistula usually they don't cause significant shunt. Correct. What else you said?
Al-Kappa, anomalous surgeon of left coronary artery from.
Yeah, you will not get such loud murmur. It's usually a soft murmur, and clinical picture will be different. You're telling all causes of continuous murmur, right? Mm-hmm. So is it more common in males or female?
Al-Kappa, ma'am.
No, this is your RSO.
RSOB males, ma'am, it is around 4:1 male to female ratio.
Once they develop rupture, what is the natural history? Once they become symptomatic?
Rupture, within 1 year, 90% will die.
If they develop heart failure.
Without intervention.
Okay, good. So you were saying some classification, no? Just I know
Yes,
you are
ma'am.
anybody for the benefit of others. Can you tell what is the classification?
Classification is modified Sakakibara classification. Originally it is Sakakibara, later it was modified. So there are 5 types of RSOV as per modified Sakakibara. One is rupturing into the right ventricle just below the pulmonary wall, and type 2 is rupture just below the supraventricular crista supraventricularis of right ventricle. And in type 3, there are 2 types, ma'am. Type 3A, type 3B. And type 2A, it is rupture into the right ventricle near the tricuspid annulus. Type 3B is rupture into the right atrium near the tricuspid annulus. And type 4 is rupturing into the right atrium. Type 5 is miscellaneous, like rupturing into the pulmonary artery, left atrium, left ventricle, or other structures.
Okay. So, have you heard of aorta LV tunnel?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
What kind of presentation they have? You heard of that? Aorta LV tunnel. So there will be a tunnel between the aortic sinus above the origin of the pulmonary arteries and into the LVOT.
They will have features of central run of aortic regurgitation. So LV failure. With these features, they commonly present with.
Yeah, they present like AR, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Present like AR. So the 2 conditions which mimic AR, one is RSOV to LV and LV aorta to LV tunnel. So what murmur they have, Arun? What type of murmur they have?
Continuous murmur.
No, continuous murmur will not be there. They'll have murmur like AR.
Yeah.
To and fro murmur.
Okay.
Yeah. During diastole, there will be flow from aorta to LV. During systole, there may be flow from LV to aorta through the tunnel, or increased flow can cause the systolic murmur. So you'll get a to and fro murmur, not continuous murmur. So again, this may mimic last 1 or 2 years back, we had kept a case for exam. This LV aorta tunnel in a child of some 6-7 years. Okay. Anything else? So how often they present acutely, Rajesh?
Acutely around 35%, ma'am. Subacute is 45%, and asymptomatic in 25%.
20%.
Yes.
That will be more than 100 if you say 25.
Sorry. Yes,
Yeah.
20.
It's 45, 35, 20.
20.
So acute is only 35. So they need not always have acute symptoms. Okay. Anything else? Any other? Here.
No.
No. Okay. Go ahead. You have anything? This is unruptured sinus. What all murmurs you expect? Sinus of valsalva aneurysm. What are the murmurs you expect?
Unruptured sinus.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. First thing is to and fro murmur within the sinus, ma'am.
Okay.
Aneurysm. Second, compressing into the RVOT and
So
RA.
Then you make it ejection systolic murmur. Then
ejection systolic murmur and compression to the RA causing tricuspid registration, pansystolic murmur, or aortic registration. EDM can cause.
Correct. Then VST. They may have VST.
VST.
So that associated VST 30%. Okay, rarely LVOT obstruction. Okay, once it is rupture, it is only the loud, superficial, continuous murmur you hear. Suppose it ruptures into the RVOT, which is supposed to be the most common. You said your patient has RVOT, yeah?
Yes,
How do you differentiate RVOT to LV body?
RVOT and RV body, ma'am.
Yeah. You said it rupturing, your patient has RVOT rupture, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
How did you say that? Depending on the murmur, right? Third space.
Fourth intercostal space.
Third space. Yes. Whereas if it is to the body, it is lower down.
Lower down.
It's the only differentiating thing. Otherwise, it will be same. Okay. Any doubts or anything?
Ma'am, one doubt, ma'am. Actually, pulmonary venous hypertension, how to say clinically?
Clinically, it is decided only by the symptoms. Okay. If it is dyspnea is class 2, if it is, you are thinking of left-sided in this. Dyspnea can be due to right side also. So if you think the dyspnea is due to left-sided failure and it's class 2, you say mild pulmonary venous hypertension. If dyspnea is class 3, your patient has PND, then you say it is moderate pulmonary venous hypertension. If dyspnea is class 4 or patient has orthopnea, then you say severe pulmonary venous hypertension. Okay, now at the end, can you tell the hemodynamics now? What has happened to them?
Hemodynamics.
Can you tell the RA pressure? RA pressure you already said it is 15
yes,
plus 5.
Yes,
RV end-diastolic pressure?
RV end-diastolic pressure elevated, ma'am.
RV end-diastolic will be same as RA mean pressure, right? Unless there is obstruction.
Obstruction, yes, ma'am.
Then PA pressure?
PA pressure elevated, ma'am, because JVP is elevated. So PA pressure will be more than 15 to 20.
Pulmonary venous pressure, you mean to say? No?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, you are even the class 2 dyspnea, you will say it is around 12 to 18, no? Class 3 will
yes,
be class 3, 18 to 25.
Yes, ma'am.
Pulmonary venous pressure. Then pulmonary artery pressure is accordingly?
Slightly more than
slightly, yeah. What is the difference? Transpulmonary gradient?
Transpulmonary gradient will be less than 12, ma'am.
Yeah, so you can add maybe 8, 10 to pulmonary venous pressure and then the pulmonary mean arterial pressure. So this can increase. When do you get increase in transpulmonary gradient?
In precapillary pH, there will be increased transpulmonary gradient.
Yeah, in mitral stenosis, can you have a wide transpulmonary gradient more than 12?
No, ma'am. Generally, it is postcapillary pH. Left-sided will cause transpulmonary gradient less than. Yes, ma'am.
Correct.
But
so when
many cases can have active pulmonary hypertension.
Second stenosis.
Yeah, they will have what? Reactive pulmonary hypertension. Reactive pulmonary hypertension level. Many a times you see in the cath lab, LA mean pressure of some 30, and the PA mean pressure you expect it to be around 40, but it will be something like 50, 60. So then you suspect reactive pulmonary hypertension. What is it due to? That reactive can occur in any left-sided lesions. What is it due to?
Pulmonary vasoconstriction. And
Why does it happen in MS?
Ma'am, interstitial pulmonary venous hypertension happens initially. This stimulates the chemoreceptors in the vein and causes reflex pulmonary arterial vasoconstriction. And secondly, because Jordan hypothesis.
What is Jordan's hypothesis?
There will be extravasation of the fluid, and there will be some fibrosis in the alveoli. This in turn causes hypoxia. Then hypoxia-induced pulmonary vasoconstriction, arterial vasoconstriction occurs. So
there is no pulmonary artery, blood will not get saturated. So there will be reflex vasoconstriction. It starts usually in the base and then usually goes up. That is reactive pulmonary hypertension. So you can have PA pressure more than what you expect corresponding to the pulmonary venous pressure, but don't ever say when there is pulmonary venous hypertension and normal pulmonary artery hypertension. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, we'll go on to any ECG X-ray have.
Yes, ma'am. I'll share.
What do you expect on the ECG?
ECG, chamber enlargement, ma'am, right ventricular and LV enlargement, LA enlargement.
Do you expect RA also?
RA here, no, ma'am.
Because you already told there is no dullness beyond the sternum. What else you expect? What else you look for? Okay, that is understandable. RV will be definitely dilated, RV dilated, LV will be dilated, LA will be dilated. What else you look for? And there is
pulmonary artery dilatation, aorta root enlargement.
ECG, yeah. We are talking about ECG.
No. Sorry,
ECG. Yeah. I don't know whether I said X-ray. If that is.
No, ma'am. ECG.
ECG, what do you expect other than this? Or you look for?
Conduction anomalous.
Correct. Yeah, there may be PR prolongation, bundle branch block, bifascicular blocks, complete heart block. Those things you should look for. Okay.
Can you say the ECG?
Yes, you can see.
4-channel 12-lead ECG with lead 2 as rhythm shift with heart rate of 90 per minute, regular. The QRS axis is around 45 mm. Lead 3 is biphasic and showing LV hypertrophy, LV enlargement. Because
is there any
LA enlargement? Mild. Yes.
All these don't have high sensitivity.
Yes.
Okay. There is LVH with?
LVH is there.
LVH with volume overload. Pressure overload.
The volume overload. There my TA apparatus is there and Q wave, very small Q wave is there.
There is standardization normal. No? You always look at
standardization. Standardization is normal only.
Okay. Peaking. No, one second. Some call is coming. Disconnecting. Okay. So there is no elongation or any other.
No conduction abnormality.
No. Okay. So another question usually asked not in this patient, when you differentiate MR and AR, how do you differentiate LVH of MR and AR?
In AR, the changes are from V3 to V6, the LV enlargement. signs of LV enlargement from V3 to V6.
Anybody else? What happens to S wave in V1, V2 in
V1.
MR versus AR?
In MR, it is preserved.
No, it's other way.
It's deeper in AR.
AR is V1, V2, you'll get deep S waves in AR. In MR, because of the large left atrium, you may not get the classical deep S waves in V1, V2.
And left atrial enlargement and AF more common with MR.
That's okay. Yeah. No, this is, I am regarding LVH with volume overload. How to differentiate MR versus AR? That is the usual question asked. You are right. LA is a feature of MR, but just I'm asking about LV volume overload. Okay. X-ray.
X-ray. Just X-ray PA view, ma'am. Is slightly overexposed, showing RA LV type of apex, ma'am. Cardiomyopathy is there, and RA occupied more than 3 intercostal space vertically, and there is a dilatation of the aorta and the dilatation of the pulmonary artery also. Pulmonary bay is obliterated, and they are looking like.
Don't say pulmonary bay is obliterated. Normally, do you get a pulmonary bay? This bay business is. You should. Bay is seen when there is small pulmonary arteries, classically in TOF. Don't say use the term. Normally, also you see the pulmonary artery prominence, right? What are those 4 Mughals? Normally, don't you get? Is it pulmonary artery is a concave or convex?
Concave.
Normally. Base is concave.
Yes,
okay, you cannot get a prominence convex, but don't say filled. Filled means it's already normal. Means bay means it is a small pulmonary arteries. Don't use the term bay normally.
Okay.
You can say when it is prominent, you say prominent. Otherwise, you say normal.
We have to say pulmonary artery normal.
Pulmonary artery segment is normal or prominent.
Okay.
You are supposed to draw a line from the aortic knuckle to the LV. It goes beyond that. It is prominent. You know about that?
Yes, ma'am. From aortic knuckle to LV, if the concavity is obliterated, we have to see for the concavity or convexity.
If your convexity goes beyond that line, then it is prominent pulmonary artery. Okay. So here the right descending pulmonary artery looks prominent. Can you use those absolute values here, Rajesh? Is it digital X-ray?
Yes, ma'am. Digital X-ray, we cannot say, ma'am, actually.
You cannot use that 16 millimeter, 17 millimeter, and even the RA you can't see. Usually the tendency is to tell that, but you cannot use. You have to use unless there is some calibration according to this.
Can we say intercostal, based on intercostal space RA enlargement?
Yeah. There are 3 criteria: more than 2.5 intercostal spaces, or more than 50% of the mediastinal height, that is from the diaphragm up to the arch, should occupy more than 50% of the mediastinal height, or 1/3 of the right hemithorax.
Okay.
So the 3 criteria for right atrial enlargement.
Okay.
Is there any left atrial enlargement, Rajesh?
Left atrial enlargement is double density shadow, like double density shadow. But trachea, we could not.
Other causes for double density?
Yes.
Can you get it? Descending aorta dilatation?
Can be seen in aortic root enlargement also. Sometimes we can get
dilatation also can get.
And
some criteria to differentiate. You read up sometimes. Yes.
Ma'am, in the X-ray that is presented, is there a third Mughal sign, LA appendage enlargement?
Not. It is just looking little prominent.
Okay.
Just below the pulmonary artery, slightly.
That is a little error. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Is there any other criteria for LAE? One is double density, second is third Mughal, third is, you all know that, I'm sure.
It's from
Straightening.
elevation of left main bronchus,
Widening
widening of the
Post-
carotid.
posteriorly, what happens? Some old examiners might ask you because
Barium swallow, esophagus
There is swallows, esophagus.
in
yes,
compression.
upper part of the esophagus gets compressed, sickling. So before the era of echo, we used to see that on sickling of the esophagus. Okay. You said it's LV type, nothing to suggest RV?
No, RV here I cannot comment.
So you need a lateral X-ray.
Lateral X-ray. Yes.
So how do you look? What do you look for in lateral X-ray?
In the lateral X-ray, retrosternal space will be obliterated, ma'am.
Which part?
In the lower part, anterior part of retrosternal.
Retrosternal space means it is anterior only. Lower 1/3 is already it is touching. It's in the middle 1/3. No, Holt neck space.
What is the term, ma'am?
Holt neck space. HOLT. Yeah.
Okay.
Next. Okay. Now what else you expect? Pulmonary venous hypertension. Is it there?
Yes, ma'am.
So you have to go
Yes, there,
systematic. First you read about those things. X-ray, PA view, position, all those things. Then you come to the CT ratio. How much did you say? CT ratio?
60%, 65.
Okay. Then LV contour, then chamber enlargement. Then you go to pulmonary venous hypertension and arterial hypertension. And what else?
Lung.
Plethora, vascularity. See, you have to, in the vascularity, you have to differentiate four things. One is venous hypertension. Second is arterial hypertension. Third is plethora. Fourth is oligemia. Okay. So venous hypertension, you all know. How do you grade that?
Yes.
Region.
It's based on the upper lobe. Initially, there will be upper lobe venous prominence, cephalization.
What is it called?
Stag antler sign or reverse Mostek sign.
Deer antler sign or staghorn sign. Okay. So these things, if you know, I'll not go into the depth because every patient, at least one case, you will be asked this question. Pulmonary venous hypertension, grading, and pulmonary venous pressure. Grade 2 is?
Grade 2 is interstitial edema, ma'am, with curly A lines or curly B lines.
Where do you look for B lines?
Curly B lines are the horizontal lines in the bases, ma'am.
No, you have to tell completely. You should not invite more questions.
Perpendicular to the pleural space. Parallel to the more in the periphery.
About 1 centimeter, and they behave. It appears like a step ladder. Okay. They're perpendicular to the pleural surface, about 1 centimeter in the lower zone. What are these lines due to? Curly A, B, C lines?
Because of interstitial edema.
Interlobular septal edema and lymphatics.
Lymphatic dilatation.
Because once there is interstitial fluid accumulation in the interstitium, there will be increased lymphatic drainage. So to prevent alveolar edema. Okay. What are the other features of interstitial edema?
They can have peribronchial coughing can be there.
So where do you look for? Perihilar region. So,
in the perihilar region.
Then
in the grade 3 they can have alveolar edema also.
No, before that, interstitial there are other things also.
Phantom tumors.
Yeah, phantom tumor, pleural effusion.
Fluid in the minus fissure and pleural effusion.
Effusion, okay. And then third, grade 3 is alveolar edema. And alveolar edema, why it is perihilar? It usually spares lateral 1/3 of the lung. That's why. Do you know?
Because
Anybody?
of better aeration in the lateral 1/3 and good lymphatics.
Yeah, it's better compliance, better aeration, and better lymphatics. The lateral 1/3, actually, if you read old Brownwell, it says it's aptly called as cortex of the lung because there is better aeration, better compliance, and better lymphatic drainage. So it is paired. Whereas in non-cardiogenic pulmonary edema, you get diffuse. So this is perihilar congestion. So if you go to Kerala, they may ask one question: what is lean bat and fat bat? Kerala examiners use confused.
In acute heart failure, there won't be cardiomegaly, that is called as lean bat. Whereas in chronic heart failure, it will be cardiomegaly will be there, that is called as fat
Yeah,
bat.
don't volunteer to tell this. Don't volunteer to tell. If they ask only, if there is no cardiomegaly, then it is lean bat. That's what they were asking in. Okay. If cardiomegaly is there, it is fat bat. The body of the bat is the heart, and the wings are perihilar shadows. Okay. So in acute pulmonary edema, it is normal sized heart. So what are the causes of acute pulmonary edema?
It can be ischemia, ma'am, acute MI causing metal, and acute MR.
See, when you're asked, you can just go on acute MI, acute MR, acute AR, myocarditis.
Yes.
Okay. So you don't have to tell the explanation. Just taka, you should mention the cause. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So when you get a case, it may not be confined to that case because this is a simple case. You have a typical history, typical findings. The discussion will go in other directions. Okay.
Yes.
So here, is there any pulmonary venous hypertension?
Is there, ma'am, pulmonary venous hypertension?
Okay.
There will be cephalization.
Yeah, at least grade 1.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is there any pulmonary artery hypertension? I think you already mentioned about prominent main pulmonary artery.
And RTP also slightly enlarged, ma'am,
So,
compared to trachea.
so what are the classic findings of pulmonary arterial hypertension?
Pulmonary arterial hypertension, ma'am, there will be peripheral central MPA dilatation with peripheral pruning.
So do you get peripheral pruning in this type 2, group 2 pulmonary hypertension? Group 2, if it is, if it is post-capillary, this is called post-capillary or pre-capillary?
This is post-capillary.
Post-capillary, you don't get pruning, okay? You will get pulmonary venous hypertension plus central artery dilatation. So you don't get pruning. Pruning is seen when there is pre-capillary pulmonary hypertension, classically pulmonary arterial hypertension. Okay, classically Eisenmenger syndrome and idiopathic pulmonary hypertension. So, then do you expect anything in the vascularity? Anything else?
There can be artery bronchial ratio will be more than 1, and we can say end-on vessels.
Okay, you expect pulmonary plethora. So what?
Pulmonary plethora.
Yeah, here you look for pulmonary plethora. This is one condition where you can get both pulmonary venous hypertension as well as plethora. Plethora, what are the findings?
End-on vessels more than 3 or more than 3 on same side, or both sides more than 5, and end-on vessels and artery to bronchial ratio more than 1.
And you will be able to trace the vessels in
up to the periphery.
Lateral 1/3 also. Normally, in mid, you may not be able to see the vessels in the lateral 1/3. Here, there are some end-on views, but not very.
There was some voice disturbance, ma'am. What is the condition, ma'am? Pulmonary plethora plus pulmonary venous hypertension.
Yeah, this is RSOV is one condition.
RSOV.
Where is it? Can you get in
post-MI VSR? Yeah.
Then maybe in children with this VSD, left to right shunt and failure, or in admixture lesions.
Lutem patches.
Lutem patches, they say usually venous hypertension doesn't occur because LA can easily decompress into RA. But, yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Anything else you have?
No, ma'am.
Echo?
Echo is rupture. I don't have echo. Ma'am.
So where does it
Rupture into
rise well?
RVOT. They have given RSOV into RVOT. RVOT. Ma'am.
Okay. So management, how do you manage patient?
Management. I'll do 2D echo and transesophageal echo, ma'am. Depending on the extent of rupture and single rupture or multiple ruptures or associated VSD with air. So
You have to look for VSD and AR. See, if there is
Yes,
VSD or AR, that becomes contraindication for what?
for catheter closure, device closure. Ma'am.
Device
Catheter
closure. Device closure can be done only when VSD and AR are not found. So you have to rule out VSD-AR. If there is significant aortic regurgitation or VSD, then patient has to undergo surgery. Okay. So suppose there is a small rupture you see. Do you repair or
we can do device closure, ma'am.
it should be treated. Just
Yes,
because it's
ma'am.
a small rupture, you should not leave it because it can progress. So even the small rupture should be treated. Okay. Another thing in the okay, when do you do surgery for an unrupture?
As I meant, unruptured with complications, causing complications like coronary compression and RVOT obstruction or LVOT obstruction.
Or arrhythmias?
Yes.
Or infected encephalitis. Okay. So, what precaution you will take during device closure? Suppose you plan for device closure.
No, I have to see for the coronary arterium proximity.
Yeah, you should not encroach on the coronary ostium or aortic valve. The most important determinant of long-term outcome is periprocedural AR. If you develop AR, because device can deform the aortic valve and cause AR. So those two things you should look for during device closure.
Okay.
So here there is no AR, no VSD. You don't know.
This was taken 3 months back. I forgot.
What was done?
They are planning for device closure only. First, initially, they thought surgery. After doing echo, they thought device closure can be done.
Okay. You presented well, answered most of the questions.
Related to the condition that we discussed, where are the peripheral signs of PR can be seen, and in which condition, ma'am? It's a whole question which was asked somewhere.
Peripheral signs of AR.
PR, ma'am. PR, pulmonary regurgitation.
Signs
Where
of
they see? Where can they be seen? In which condition?
Andre, what peripheral signs?
PR, ma'am. Pulmonary regurgitation.
Okay, you patient with pulmonary regurgitation and peripheral signs of what? Huh?
Is it with the PD or any other answer?
No, peripheral PR when there is PDA with Eisenmengerization and severe PR, you may see peripheral signs of aortic regurgitation. That's what you are asking?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Very rarely when there is a torrential PR in PDA-PH, you can get because there is runoff from the aorta through the ductus
Into the pulmonary.
into the right ventricle. So you can get some collapsing pulse and peripheral signs. That doesn't mean that this duct is operable.
Okay. Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay.
Ma'am, one question that is also unrelated to this case, ma'am. Actually, we'll say in JVP, without there will be prominent EA wave normally also, ma'am. Sometimes we can see prominent EA wave without elevation of the main column. So in these conditions, how to say that is prominent EA wave?
What they say is it should be 5 centimeters above the main JV. To make out that, I am not very sure.
And One more question, ma'am. Generally, some examiners they are saying if JVP is elevated in sitting position, that means JVP is elevated. No need of mentioning centimeters.
No, you should see when you are examining JVP. First thing you should say whether it is elevated or not. In sitting posture, if you see the JVP above the clavicle, it is elevated.
Yes, ma'am.
You measure the vertical height from the sternal angle. So if you measure from the clavicle, it's okay. You can mention this 3 centimeter from the clavicle, 5 centimeter from the clavicle. That is okay. But when you're asked to estimate the right atrial pressure, then you will have to take the height from the sternal angle to the upper level of the JVP and then add 5.
Okay.
The third thing is wave pattern. Fourth is
Respiratory variation.
Fifth,
Hepatojugular reflex.
only if JVP
is not elevated.
Then sometimes they ask you to auscultate also. So when do you auscultate?
Venous hum.
Yeah, look for venous hum. Okay. In TR, you may hear some sounds. Okay.
Clear.
On the sternal angle, if you say more than 3 or 4 centimeter is, anyway, from sternal angle to clavicle, it will be around 4 or 5 centimeters. So if it is not seen above the clavicle, you can say JVP is not elevated. If they still want, you will have to put them in 45 degree and look for the vertical height. So if you anyway you have to look at the waveforms, you will have to put them in 45 degree, because in sitting posture, if it is normal, you will not see the upper level and you cannot get the waveforms, analyze the waveforms.
Okay.
If it is already elevated above the clavicle in sitting posture, no need to put them in 45. You can assess in the sitting posture.
Okay.
Ma'am, what are the normal contours of JVP? Normal variants in the contours of JVP?
Normal?
Variants of contours of JVP. I too didn't get the question, ma'am. Actually, this was asked by one of my professors. He said that there is an old article where they will give the normal contours of normal variants in the contours of JVP.
I'm not sure. I can find out and tell you in the next thing. Okay. So it's what else write down. Normal variant.
Yes,
normal
variants in the contours of JVP.
Normal variants. I have actually read extensively about JVP because I had taken a class. I didn't come across.
Okay.
Normal variants of contour. Okay.
I have one doubt, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, not about this case, ma'am. In mitral stenosis, when there is a severe pulmonary hypertension, what kind of apex we have to mention? LV type only, ma'am? Or we should not mention any type of LV or RV, ma'am?
In MS or MR?
MS, severe MS with severe PAH.
Oh, it depends. No, you may get an RV type of apex. It depends whether you are able to localize the apex. Usually in MS, LV is underfilled, so you'll get a kind of hypo.
Yes, ma'am.
So if it is severe PH, I'm sure it will be RV. Okay.
So in exam, we should mention like RV type only, ma'am. If we are getting poorly localized and
poorly localized.
defining. Okay.
Yeah, if there is a parasternal heave which is extending to the apex, and it's better you say RV apex if you're not able to localize.
Okay.
Even in left lateral, if you're not able to localize, then you can say RV.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.